If you're thinking about starting your own Apple smart home from scratch, you may be wondering where you should begin. I know whenever I was getting into smart home tech and starting my own smart home from scratch, I did not even know where to begin. And maybe you feel the same way. In this video, I'll share with you my top tips for starting an Apple smart home from scratch, best practices for a reliable smart home, and the first devices that I would buy if I was starting a smart home from the beginning. These tips apply if you're adding devices to a home that is already built, or if you are building a new home from the ground up. My name is Adam, and if you're not familiar with what HomeKit is, I recently made a beginner's guide video to what HomeKit is and how it works, which you can check out right here or somewhere right up here. So today I want to focus on tips for starting an Apple smart home from scratch, and the first tip is build a strong home network. Building a strong home network is a crucial first step for any smart home, and it can make a big difference in a smart home that works well and a smart home that constantly has issues. You want a router that can keep up with adding lots of devices to your network, whether it's phones, tablets, laptops, or smart devices. And with an older or out-of-date router, your network will slow down and cause issues like devices dropping connection or responding very slowly. To prevent this, you want an up-to-date router with the latest technologies and security standards, which if you're building a smart home, then you want to go with a Wi-Fi 6 enabled router, as Wi-Fi 6 is specifically designed to handle multiple smart home devices. I would highly recommend using a mesh system instead of a standalone router. A mesh network has one main node that connects to your router, ideally in the middle of your home, then has additional points that you can put in any room by plugging into any outlet, and the main node sends the internet signal to the points, giving you strong Wi-Fi coverage all throughout your home. I would avoid standalone routers as they often don't have as big of a range as mesh networks. And the same thing applies to Wi-Fi range extenders. You definitely want to avoid extenders as they often have issues and don't usually work and creates a complicated network setup. A mesh system is the same concept as a router and extender, it's just all baked into one system and a lot easier to manage. My recommendation for a good Wi-Fi 6 router is the eero 6. I've been using the eero 6 2-pack for about 2 years now, and I have fast Wi-Fi coverage all throughout my house. There are other Wi-Fi 6 mesh systems available, like some by Linksys, TP-Link, and Netgear, though I personally have not used these. Having a strong home network with the most up-to-date security standards is a great way to keep your smart home running well and your devices protected. Speaking of devices that need to be protected, an iPhone is certainly one of them. Thankfully, this is easy to do with durable cases from Casekoo, who is sponsoring today's video. I've been using their new Cloud Cush case that not only looks incredible with a cloud-like design, but also has a military-grade drop resistance with a 360-degree air cushion feature that absorbs shocks when the phone is dropped. I drop my phone a lot, and this Cloud Cush case has been helpful in keeping my phone protected when my phone hits the ground. The case has a silky smooth touch that makes the phone easy to hold for extended periods of time, like watching videos or playing games. It comes in 5 colors for the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. Casekoo is also doing a giveaway where you can win an iPad by sharing on social media a way you relieve stress. A way I relieve stress is by listening to music and reading a book outside. And if you use my code AdamTechLife10, then you can take 10% off your order. Check out the link in the description below, and a huge thank you for Casekoo for sponsoring today's video. Now let's look at the next tip that I have for you if you're starting an Apple smart home from scratch, and that is use a hub or bridge when possible. You may be wondering, should I buy devices that connect to a hub or bridge, or devices that connect to Wi-Fi only? Now, devices that are connected to a hub or bridge tend to be more stable and more reliable than devices that connect to Wi-Fi, so I would say use a hub as much as possible, with a few exceptions. Devices that connect to a bridge or a hub includes devices like smart lights from Philips Hue or devices by Aqara. Each of their devices connect to their respective hub and communicate via Zigbee, a more reliable and faster connection than Wi-Fi. Ideally, you'd want to connect your hubs via Ethernet to your router for the best performance. If you are using many Wi-Fi enabled devices, then it can cause your Wi-Fi to slow down and cause other devices to have a slower connection. Though this is not always the case, and it does vary by device, some devices are more reliable than others. Smart plugs by Maris and light strips by Onvis do not use a hub and have worked well for me over Wi-Fi. There's also Thread, a newer connection type that is also more stable and more reliable than using Wi-Fi. Thread devices connect to a border router, which is an Apple Home Hub, and the more thread devices that you add to your network, the stronger the thread network will be. Speaking of hubs, one hub that you would definitely want for your Apple Smart Home is an Apple Home Hub. An Apple Home Hub allows you to do things like viewing the status of your devices remotely and controlling them remotely as well, like turning them on or off, viewing your camera feeds remotely, and the ability to share your HomeKit home with somebody. This could be a spouse or anybody that you want to have access to control your devices. Most importantly though, an Apple Home Hub allows you to create some automations for your smart home, which is easily the best part about having a smart home and makes having a smart home highly practical. Some of my favorite automations are having my lights automatically turn on when I arrive home, using a contact sensor on a door to turn on the lights in a room when the door is opened, and when my TV is turned on, a light strip behind it automatically turns on to a blue color for some nice accent lighting. If you do not have an Apple Home Hub, then you can still add accessories that support Apple Home and control your smart home devices, but only when your phone is nearby and connected to the same network as your device. When you're away, you won't be able to see the status of your devices remotely or control them remotely, or the ability to have other people control your devices or for automations to run. I also want to add that if you are using a smart device that supports Matter, a new smart home standard, then you will need an Apple Home Hub to use the Matter device in the Home app because it will not work without an Apple Home Hub. I've made a video on Apple Home Hubs, which I will leave linked right up here, and in that video I talk about what devices can be a home hub, the pros and cons of each, and why it does not really matter which device you choose to be your home hub. The next tip is something that I wish I knew before I started my own smart home, and that tip is to start slow and upgrade over time. It can be very exciting and overwhelming trying to make your whole house smart all at once. So I would encourage you, especially if you're just starting out getting into smart home tech, to start small and add devices over time. Now, a good example of starting off small is to maybe add something like a smart plug and put it on a fan. That way you can control the power from your phone, and then maybe upgrade to putting a smart bulb inside of a lamp. See how you like things first and kind of get familiar with how smart home tech works, and then if you like it, then you can start upgrading to bigger things like maybe a smart switch or a smart thermostat. If you're building a new home, then it is a little easier to install everything new all at once if you know exactly what you want, instead of having to replace devices throughout your home, especially when it comes to installing cameras and switches. It's easier to hardwire them early on than having to crawl through the attic once the house is built. But it can be better to add devices over time rather than all at once. Now keep in mind that you do not have to buy all these smart home devices available on the market. Only buy the ones that will benefit you. Find devices that would solve a problem in your home or that would make your life easier. Don't just buy a device because it's cool, buy a device because it's practical for you. Maybe you want convenience features like being able to control the thermostat or your lights from the couch so you don't have to get up each time to adjust them. Or maybe you want security features like having cameras around your house to keep an eye on what's going on in an area that you need to keep watch over. Or a contact sensor to be alerted if a door is open or left open when it should not be. There are many different types of smart devices available on the market, and they're all designed to solve a problem and add convenience to your life. But don't feel like you have to buy a device just because it's smart. Buy it because it's practical for you. I'll give you a great example of why this is not always a good idea. There are smart vacuums on the market, and the idea of them is great. You can have the vacuum clean your house while you're away so you can come home to a clean house. I had a Roomba for a while and it got the job done. However, I have a small house and I realized that it took me just as long to vacuum the house with a Dyson handheld vacuum than it did a Roomba. So a smart vacuum was not super practical for me, but maybe it is for you if you have a large house. It's all about figuring out what you want your smart home to do for you and then finding devices that allow you to do just that. Speaking of devices, if I was creating an Apple smart home from scratch and had to do all this all over again, what are the first 5 devices that I would buy? And maybe you're wondering the same thing too. There are many smart devices on the market. Which ones should I buy first? Well, here's the first 5 devices that I would start out with and the problem that they solve for me. And device number 5 is a device that most people would not expect, yet it's something that I use personally every single day and that I cannot live without. but more on that at the very end. The first type of device that I would get is a smart light. I got tired of having to manually get up to turn off the light or having to remember to turn on the light when I walk into a room. Especially at night when I'm all cozy in bed, I don't want to get out of bed to turn off the light. So having a smart light allows me to just use my voice and tell Siri to either dim the brightness or just turn off the light. Yes, I am lazy and I will admit it. For smart bulbs, I would go with Philips Hue. I've used many different brands of smart lights and I found Philips Hue to be the most reliable since they work over Zigbee using a Philips Hue hub. I like their colored bulbs, but they also make them in a white if you don't need or want colors. For smart switches, I would go with Lutron Casekoo. Lutron uses their own hub as well, and they're one of the most reliable brands that I have ever used. My next choice would be Aqara if you do not need dimming. After upgrading my lights, I would upgrade my thermostat next. I love being able to control the temperature of my house from the couch, or the house to start cooling itself while I'm away, so I can walk into a cool house. My choice for a thermostat would be the ecobee 3 Lite thermostat. Now ecobee makes advanced thermostats with Siri built in, and that's cool and all, but I just want the basics, like being able to turn the temperature down or up from my phone, and I don't need all the extra bells and whistles, which is why I really like the ecobee 3 Lite. It's basic, but it gets the job done. After smart lights and a smart thermostat, the next device that I would get is smart cameras. I like the ability to see what's going on while I'm away and see who's at the door with a video doorbell. I'm personally a huge fan of the brand Eufy, and some of their cameras work with HomeKit and HomeKit Secure Video, Apple's cloud video recording. Eufy makes indoor cameras like ones that pan and tilt around the room and one that's stationary, and both have support for local storage. They're very affordable and a basic camera for HomeKit. I recently made a video comparing a bunch of indoor HomeKit cameras, which you can check out right here if you want to see how Eufy stacks up against other brands. For outdoor cameras, I like the Eufy 2C. They support HomeKit and HomeKit Secure Video and are very easy to use. If you're building a smart home from scratch, then having wired cameras will give you 24/7 local storage, which is not something that you get with battery-powered cameras. So, if you want constant recording, then you may want to run your wires first. Otherwise, it can be very difficult or impossible to run a cable after your house is already built. I'd personally prefer having hardwired cameras over battery cameras, since sometimes battery-powered cameras will start recording a clip too late or cut the clip off too early, and that's where continual recording comes in handy. For video doorbells, I do not have a wired connection to my front door, so I've not been able to test out the one by Logitech or by Belkin, but my favorite doorbell so far is the Eufy Doorbell Dual that has 2 cameras, one for viewing people and one for viewing packages. It does not work with HomeKit natively, but with a third-party bridge like HomeBridge, you can get it to work with HomeKit. I've been testing the Eufy Doorbell Dual in HomeKit recently, and I've discovered a few things. Let me know if you want a video tutorial on this. The next device that I would get is context sensors. I have a big backyard for my dogs to play in, and I have a context sensor on my back gate that allows me to receive an alert when it's opened or if it has been open for over 5 minutes. It's a way I can make sure that the gate is closed before I let them out. My choice for a context sensor is one by Aqara. It works over Zigbee with an Aqara hub, and it's very fast to respond and has worked great for me. The last device that I would buy when starting a smart home from scratch is not something that you would expect, and that is the Aqara wireless mini switch. It's a small button that you can use to control your devices with a single press, double press, or press and hold. I have many of these scattered throughout my house, and I use them to quickly turn on or off lights, run my scenes like this movie scene here, or my favorite one is at my front door that turns off my entire house as I'm walking out the door. Using the Aqara mini switch is an easier way to control devices when I do not have my phone on me or I don't want to talk to Siri. So if you're wanting to start your own Apple smart home from scratch, then I would recommend first creating a solid home network. Use a hub or bridge when possible. Choose your Apple Home Hub and start small with only a few devices before upgrading your entire home. What tips would you have for somebody starting an Apple smart home from scratch? Post your tips down in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one.